Your fingers stop working first, then your thoughts get slow, then your body starts making a choice for you, pulling blood away from your skin and into your core, because staying warm matters more than staying comfortable. You have never had to fight for that warmth. Not really. For most of human history, this fight never stopped. 20,000 years ago, during the coldest stretch of the Ice Age scientists called the Last Glacial Maximum, parts of Europe and Asia sat under conditions colder than most of modern Siberia. No heated homes, no down jackets from a store, no emergency blanket in a car trunk. Just a body built for the African savanna dropped into a world that wanted, which meant the Ice Age human needed a second skin, an artificial one. This is where archaeologist Ian Gilligan's research becomes essential. Gilligan spent years studying how clothing itself evolved, and his work points to something surprising. The earliest clothing wasn't really about modesty or decoration. It was thermal engineering, full stop. Wrapping the body in animal hide changes the entire physics of heat loss. It traps a layer of warm air right against the skin, cutting wind chill and slowing the escape of body heat by a wide margin. But wrapping isn't the same as tailoring. A loose hide thrown over the shoulders still leaks heat at every gap, every seam, every place cold air can slip in. To really trap warmth, you need fitted clothing, sleeves, layers, something closer to a parka than a blanket. And that brings in one of the most remarkable pieces of physical evidence we have. At Sungir, a site in Russia dated to roughly 30,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered burials of Upper Paleolithic humans covered in thousands of small ivory beads. At first, that just looks like decoration, but the position of the beads tells a different story. They were arranged in lines and patterns consistent with being sewn onto fitted garments, tracing the outline of shirts, trousers, even footwear. That's not a blanket draped over a shoulder. That's a tailored winter suit designed by people who understood exactly where their bodies lost heat. Alongside that, researcher Olga Soffer studied tiny clay fragments from a site called Dolní Věstonice in the modern Czech Republic. Under magnification, some of those fragments preserved the impressions of woven plant fiber, evidence of cordage and possibly early textiles pressed into wet clay before it hardened. Combine that with the eyed sewing needles found at multiple Upper Paleolithic sites, needles fine enough to work with sinew thread, and a picture forms. These weren't people surviving on instinct. They were engineers of insulation, stitching fitted, layered clothing at least 20,000 years before agriculture even existed. Clothing solved the body. But what about the ground you slept on and the air around your skin at night? Let's reconstruct a scene. Picture a shelter dug slightly into the earth, its walls braced with mammoth bone, because trees were scarce this far from any forest. The floor isn't bare dirt. It's layered with dry grass, moss, animal hide, anything that traps air instead of conducting cold straight up through the ground. A fire burns near the entrance, angled so smoke drifts out rather than filling the space. The people inside sleep close together, bodies stacked for shared warmth, wrapped in the tailored hides that took days of scraping and stitching to make. Every one of those details is a decision. Every decision came from trial, failure, and hard-earned knowledge passed from one generation to the next. And here's the counterintuitive twist most people miss. Surviving extreme cold wasn't primarily a triumph of individual toughness. It was a triumph of shared knowledge and social cooperation. A single person, no matter how strong, does not out-engineer an Ice Age winter alone. Sewing a fitted hide garment, tanning leather so it doesn't rot or stiffen, managing a fire that lasts through a sub-zero night, all of it depends on techniques learned from someone else, refined over generations, and taught deliberately to children who would need them to survive their own winters. This is a pattern anthropologists see again and again in cold-adapted groups. Cooperation wasn't a nice bonus on top of survival, it was the actual survival mechanism. Groups that shared clothing techniques, fire-starting methods, and shelter designs outlasted groups that didn't. Culture became a kind of external, inherited immune system against the cold, one that worked at the level of the tribe instead of the individual body. Even the Neanderthals, a cousin species that lived through earlier ice ages in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, show evidence of this same pattern. Sites like Abric Romani in Spain reveal repeated, carefully maintained hearths, built and rebuilt in the same spots across generations. That's not a lucky fire. That's inherited fire management, a piece of practical knowledge kept alive because someone bothered to teach it. So when you strip away the myth of the lone caveman gritting his teeth through the frost, what's left is something closer to a technical civilization, built entirely around staying warm. Clothing design, shelter engineering, controlled fire, food storage for the long, dark months when nothing grew. None of it required metal, writing, or wheels. All of it required cooperation and memory. Which brings up the modern mirror. You almost certainly own a coat with a zipper, insulation rated for a specific temperature, and stitching engineered by people who understand thermal physics precisely.
You've probably never once thought about how strange that is. Your grandmother didn't invent that jacket, neither did you. It's the end product of an unbroken chain of shared knowledge stretching back to someone at Sungir, cutting hide with a stone blade, threading sinew through a bone needle, trying to keep their child alive through one more freezing night. Every time you zip up a jacket without thinking twice, you're using 30,000 years of accumulated human problem solving. You didn't earn that knowledge. You inherited it. And for most of the people who built it, there was no guarantee it would work. No manual to check, no way to know for certain the stitching would hold until morning. Your fingers stop working first. Then your thoughts get slow, and somewhere in that fight against the cold, thousands of generations ago, someone figured out exactly how to stop it from ever reaching that point again, and pass the answer down to you.